Hi everyone, this is a brief overview of a community analysis paper. We may have gone over it in class, but I want you to be able to have it to go back and listen to. So the purpose of a community analysis is to give the reader an idea of who your population is and where they are. So it's going to include a summary of the needs assessment. You're going to describe your community, and you're going to just discuss your risk factors within your community compared to another group. So you're going to define the problem using local secondary data. And your needs assessment was national secondary data. You're going to use local secondary data. You're almost completely going to be using websites. We went over in class what primary data are, and you're going to need primary data, and everything you write should support your grant's goals, and it should also align with your needs assessment. So these are the types of things you're going to use for secondary data. YRBSS is a national survey, and there's other surveys. You can use web pages like CDC or NIH. Any web page that ends in .gov, .edu, or .org is almost always a reliable source. In assignment 1.2, I asked you to identify links in your grant. And so there are some links in your grant for content, places to get information, and I probably left you one or two links to get you to sites that would have information that you can use. Morbidity and Mortality Weekly is a weekly publication from the Centers for Disease Control. You might use articles, and remember we have a course webpage that's linked to, that is links that are provided. So the link to the course webpage should be in our Blackboard page. If not, remember it's in the library page under resources. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to put these headings in your paper so that you're sure that you're covering what you should cover. In the introduction, you're going to have a summary of your needs assessment. It's most likely going to be 2 to 3 paragraphs long. And so your entire needs assessment paper has to get into 2 to 3 paragraphs now. And you may have trouble doing that. If it goes longer than 3 paragraphs, that's okay. I will help you make it shorter. At the end of this introduction section, you're going to state all the risk factors, and you're going to state which risk factors you are addressing in your program. The next part of this paper is the goals of the grant, and here you copy and paste your goals, and I just make sure you're using the right ones, which are from the they're from the grant summary sheet. Next is your community analysis. In this part, there's a couple things you have to do. One is you have to describe your community and population. So in the community analysis lesson, there were lots of things that you could use to organize yourself and what you need and where you need it from. So you need to really look at that information that we used in class or that you finished at home and decide what goes in this paper to describe your population and the community. When the reader finishes reading this section, in their head, they should actually be able to envision what your community looks like and what the people are like who live there. And so you're going to describe geography. Is it rural? Is it urban? What is the housing situation? What do people do for recreation? What kind of layout of the environment is there? How much open space? How many parks? Those are all the kind of things that you'll see in the community analysis material from class. Then you need to describe the people. What's the age breakdown? What's their race and ethnicity breakdown? What do the people in this community look like? And then at the end of this section, it is a good idea to restate your risk factors. So, and there's an example here. Ice creamitis is a leading cause of death in this population, and the risk factors that are addressed in this program are, and you're going to list them in the order in which you discuss them. You've already done this in the first section, but it's a good idea to restate the risk factors to remind your reader what you're going to discuss. So each risk factor that you have identified is going to be covered in your program. You have to provide data that show your population has this issue in this community. So here's an example. It says, according to CDC 2020, people are more likely to die from ice creamitis if they live in poverty. So we've cited the fact. In your community with the name, 42% of people live in poverty compared to the United States where only 18% of all people live in poverty. That shows that there are more people in your community in poverty compared to the US. Then in this next section it says, while 41% of all blacks live in poverty in the US, 53% of all blacks people living in poverty in this community. Again, another way to cite the same information. Further disparities are found when compared to national data where 7% of white, 38% of American Indians, and 15% of Hispanics live in poverty. And so other items that show poverty would be median income, unemployment, ownership of homes, and other things we discussed in class. You will discuss the concepts exactly like it is here with statements that are cited that prove that your community is higher in each risk factor. Following the secondary community level data, you'll then describe which primary data you're going to collect. Primary data are data that support or supplement secondary data. Each risk factor will take 1 to 3 paragraphs. I always recommend that there's 1 paragraph of secondary data, maybe 2, and 1 paragraph of primary data. So you will have risk factor secondary data, the same risk factor primary data, then the next risk factor secondary data, primary data, and you'll repeat that for each risk factor. Again, if you don't have enough information or you can't find something, you need to put it right in your paper. So the next risk factor is community attitude, and you write, I can't find that, or I need help finding that, or this is where I've looked and I can't find it. If you don't have information there and you haven't written something, I assume you haven't done it. That's why it's important to write down where you are in your data. And again, just like the hamburger analogy that we've discussed a couple times, your summary is similar to your introduction. Like the hamburger bun, the introduction is bigger, the summary is smaller, but they're both bread. They both have to describe the issue, just the introduction is more elaborate, the summary is more succinct. Before you write your paper, I want you to gather all of your assignments, annotated bibliographies, outlines, prior graded work with feedback, because that's how I want you to write your paper. You want to have your articles nearby, but I don't want you to use the articles or the web pages or the electronic documents to write your paper. You may have to go back and look at something because what you have in your outline, for example, is not specific enough. But I want you to try to write your paper from your assignments and not from the articles. Set up the title page, put in your headings, and then use your assignments to write the paper. If you have any questions, please make sure you reach out.